You've been told that the hardest worker always wins. And that's true if the goal is to burn. Those who break through, those who grow faster than everybody else, those who scale at insane speed without losing themselves in the process, they're not outworking you. They're not more disciplined than you. And they certainly aren't suffering more than you to get to their goals. In fact, they're doing the opposite. They're working less, they're having more fun, and they're growing fast. Because they follow one rule that every elite founder lives by at every level of business. Do it. And the work that now feels heavy starts to feel addictive. And that exactly is what's going to make you successful. Not trying to out-hustle everybody else, but rather understand how to make the work feel addictive. I'm León Castillo, investor, university professor, and founder of Selfmastered.com, where we help founders reach their revenue goals 4 times faster using neuroscience and data. And these founders aren't winning because they work harder. They're winning because they work on a different thing than most. Elon Musk has a name for it. He calls it always work on the limiting factor. Others call it attack the bottleneck. The bottleneck in your business isn't the most urgent thing. It's not the thing with the most Slack notifications. It's not the thing that feels productive. It's the hardest, ugliest, most ambitious problem sitting in your business right now. The one with no playbook and certainly no shortcut. The thing you'd rather pay someone else to solve if you could, but you can't because only the founder can figure it out. And that bottleneck evolves as you grow. At 20K a month, the bottleneck is typically outreach. At 100K a month, it's typically hiring. At 500K a month, it's a new offer or a new channel. At 1 million a month, it's something you've never done before. But every single time you crack the bottleneck, a quantum leap follows. The business changed shape almost overnight. Every single time. That's the rule. Attack the bottleneck consistently. The founders who do this consistently are the ones who inevitably compound. Now, let me show you why most founders are doing instead, so you see exactly where they're losing the race. If the rule is this simple, attack the bottleneck, why isn't every founder following it? Because most founders have built a life that looks like they're following it while they're actually doing the opposite. 11 hours a day on their laptop, 2 to 3 hours of genuine work on the bottleneck. The other 8 are answering emails, putting out fires, tweaking systems, taking calls that feel important but change nothing. They're busy, they're productive looking, they're exhausted, but they're avoiding the one thing that would change their revenue the most. Mark Zuckerberg said something that stuck with me years ago. My number one job is figuring it out. What is the most important thing to work on? Not the most urgent thing, not the one with the loudest inbox, the most important thing. So the CEO of a $1 trillion company has reduced his entire role to one question. What is the bottleneck? If that's his only job, what's yours? Well, exactly the same. Work on the bottleneck until you solve it, and then find the next bottleneck. But this doesn't come naturally to you. And every time you try to do it and you fail to consistently deliver on it, you're told that you have some sort of discipline problem. So you think you solve it by grinding harder, by suffering more, by, freezing yourself in a cold shower. No, that's just not why you can work on the bottleneck consistently. What's happening at the brain level every time you sit down to work on it is that you know what your bottleneck is right now. You've known for months. Why aren't you attacking it? Well, it's not a lack of knowledge. You know what you should be working on. It's a biological gap. The bottleneck, by definition, is the highest load task in your business. It carries the highest uncertainty, ambiguity, and risk of failure. Your brain is wired for comfort, wired for safety, and it is not wired to walk into ambiguity with a smile. Your brain has a comfort zone, built on your current skills, beliefs, and behavior, built on who you are today. And the bottleneck sits outside that zone. So your brain treats it the same way it would treat a predator, as a threat to be avoided, not an opportunity to be approached. And it pulls you towards busy work, towards email, towards strategic calls that feel important but change nothing, towards anything that keeps you productive and safe. And you've been told this is a character flaw. You need more willpower, more accountability, better habits. That's like telling someone you enjoy drowning by swimming harder. That's just not how it works. Because you don't avoid the hard thing because you lack discipline. That's bullshit. You avoid it because your capacity sits below the friction that bottleneck carries. The bottleneck is heavier than your brain's ability to handle it. And nobody ever told you that capacity is trainable. Before I show you how to train it though, I want you to understand how every day of avoidance is actually costing you, so you understand why the math gets worse the longer you wait. Every day you don't train your capacity to attack the bottleneck, someone with half your talent and a quarter of your experience is passing you by. Not because they're better, but because they're doing the hard thing while you're doing the productive looking thing. Every hour spent on the second most important thing instead of the most important thing widens the gap. And the gap doesn't compound linearly, but exponentially. And what's worse is that the cost isn't just flat revenue. Every week you avoid the bottleneck, the avoidance gets stronger. The comfort zone shrink. The thing you need to do becomes more intimidating, not less. And your brain learns the real lesson, we don't do that here, and rewires yourself away from the moves that would grow the business. That's the real tax. Not the money, the slow erosion of self-trust, the quiet weekly loss of your belief that you can actually do what you say you'll do. By the time most founders notice, they spend 2 years circling a bottleneck that they would have cracked in 1 week of focused attack. Now, the good news is your brain is neuroplastic. The wiring that defaults to avoidance can be retrained. Let me show you the 3-step loop that does it so you have a concrete protocol rather than just more advice. If your capacity is below the friction, you can't fix it by trying harder. You have to train your capacity and reduce friction, the same way you train any other capacity, with a protocol, not a pep talk. And the universal protocol that we follow in Selfmastered that works for every bottleneck is very simple. Step 1 is to identify. The problem this solves is that most founders don't even know what the bottleneck is. They have a vague sense of what they should be working on, but vague isn't useful. We must be absolutely specific about what is the thing we need to be working on to move to the next level. And there's a 10-second test that I like to do. Ask yourself every morning, what is the number one thing that if completed would do everything else easier or irrelevant? That's the bottleneck. And if you can't answer in 10 seconds, then the bottleneck is clarity itself. The task is to sit down and figure out what the bottleneck is, because there always is a bottleneck. Step 2, obviously, is to attack it, because the bottleneck has no playbook. You don't know the exact steps. And most founders will interpret this as, I need to plan or research more before I can actually do the thing. That's the trap. The ambiguity is the work. You must start working if you want clarity, not wait for clarity before you start working. So imagine that you are at 10K a month and you need to fill your pipeline through DMs. You've known this for 3 months, you haven't done it. Well, because probably you keep iterating with the same DM sequence instead of just shooting 100 DMs per week and learning as you go. Instead of reorganizing your CRM, instead of researching the best sequence, you just attack it. Every single day, first 90 minutes, before email, before Slack, before anything else, you send 20 DMs. Some of them will be bad, some of them will be good, some of them will eventually land. And by day 5, you've sent 100 DMs and you've learned more by practicing 1 week than by researching for 3 months. And what happens at the brain level is that by week 2, the resistance starts fading. By week 3, you are in a rhythm. And by week 4, you are absolutely in love with sending DMs. That's the bottleneck cracking. In fact, if you look at the research, it takes about roughly 20 hours of focused practice to reach functional proficiency in any skill. So most bottlenecks really can be solved with 2 hours of working 90 minutes on them. Step 3 is to systematize. Once you have cracked the bottleneck, you must make sure that they don't become a bottleneck again. So you turn it into a repeatable process. Maybe the DM outreach can be done by a VA. Maybe the hiring process can be a system. Maybe the paid ads process can be delegated to an agency. What was once hard becomes automatic. Your comfort zone expands permanently. Then you find the next bottleneck and the cycle starts again. Identify, attack, systematize. That's the entire game. And across the 6-figure founders we've typically worked with that have run a protocol for 12 weeks, they tend to 2.7x their revenue. And this is not because they suddenly work harder, but because they literally learn to have fun when working on the hardest thing. And once you get this right, everything else exponentially improves. Everything gets easier. What changes when your capacity outgrows your bottleneck? Well, 3 things in order. First, the avoidance drops. You stop dreading your own calendar. Monday morning, first thing you do is the hardest thing, not because you force yourself, but because you want to. Second, you start seeking friction. The hard conversation, the complex strategy, the ugly unresolved problem, they become the most interesting part of your day. Not the dread, the actual fuel. And third, and this is the one that matters most to you, is that your identity shifts. You stop being the founder who should attack the bottleneck and become the founder who naturally does it. The work everyone else avoids becomes the work you look forward to. And that's what makes you special. Not because you suddenly become more disciplined or because you learn to suffer better. No, because you now have proof that you can tackle anything life throws at you. The psychological term for this is self-efficacy. And that's why elite founders are elite, because they have trained themselves to execute consistently on the work that matters. So if any part of this video landed, the avoidance, the comfort zone, the bottleneck you've been searching for months, Here's what to do next. Take the founder score, link below, takes about 3 minutes. And that's going to give you 3 things. 1, your current execution capacity mapped against the 400 founder data set. So you see exactly where you stand in hard numbers. 2, the specific gap between where you are and where high capacity founders operate. Not a vague, you need to hustle harder, a measured distance. And finally, a personalized breakdown of where your capacity is breaking down. Maybe it's skills, maybe it's beliefs, maybe it's behavior. We don't know, but that diagnostic is going to give you the roadmap for you to get to the next level. So stop guessing what's wrong. Stop guessing why you're not working on the bottleneck and actually measure it. I'll see you in the next one.